I've had moments in my life where the room was full, yet I felt completely alone. And I've had other moments where there was no one around me at all, but I felt stronger, clearer, and more focused than ever before. What I discovered in those moments changed everything about how I approach life, success, and personal strength. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like you're walking your path completely on your own? Like no one truly understands your struggles, your ambitions, or the weight you carry? If that's you, I want you to pause for a second and share your experience in the comments below. Because the truth is, you're not alone in feeling alone, and there's a powerful lesson hidden inside that experience. I want to speak to you directly, honestly, and from experience. There will be times in your life when support disappears. The encouragement fades. The applause goes silent. And in those moments, you're faced with a choice. Either you shrink or you rise. I learned early on that independence is not just the skill, it's a necessity. If you rely on others for motivation, validation, or direction, you're putting your future in someone else's hands. And that's a dangerous place to live. The most successful people I've ever studied and worked with all share one trait. They developed the ability to move forward even when no one was cheering them on. Here's a fact. No one is thinking about your life as much as you are. People are busy with their own problems, their own goals, their own fears. That means if you're waiting for someone to come and push you, encourage you, or rescue you, could be waiting forever. So what do you do when no one is by your side? You become your own source of strength. I want you to understand something very important. Self-reliance is not about isolation, it's about empowerment. It's about knowing that no matter what happens externally, you have the internal resources to keep going. And that begins with how you talk to yourself. Every day, you are having a conversation in your mind. Most people don't even realize it, but it's shaping their reality. When things get difficult and no one is there to lift you up, what do you say to yourself? Do you tell yourself you're not good enough, that you can't do it? Or do you step up and say, I've got this, I will find a way? Because the words you say to yourself in private will determine the results you get in public. I made it a habit to consciously control my inner dialogue. When I faced rejection, I didn't tell myself I was a failure, I told myself I was learning. When I felt alone, I didn't see it as abandonment, I saw it as an opportunity to build strength. That shift in perspective is everything. Let me give you an argument you can test in your own life. Solitude is not your enemy, it's your training ground. When you're alone, you have the chance to think deeply, to plan strategically, and to build emotional resilience. You're not being left behind, you're being prepared. But preparation requires action. If you want to get by, even thrive, when no one is by your side, you must develop discipline, not motivation. Motivation is temporary. Discipline is what carries you through when you don't feel like moving forward. There were days when I didn't feel inspired, days when I doubted myself. But I made a decision early on that I would act regardless of how I felt. And that's a principle you must adopt if you want to succeed in life. Action creates momentum. Momentum builds confidence. And confidence attracts opportunities. So even when you feel alone, take one step, just one. Because one step leads to another, and before you know it, you've built a path that others will eventually follow. Now here's something else you need to hear. Not everyone is meant to walk with you. This is a difficult truth, but it's a necessary one. As you grow, as you evolve, as you chase bigger goals, you will outgrow certain people. And sometimes the loneliness you feel is not because you're losing people, it's because you're rising to a new level. Think about that. Growth often feels like separation, but that separation is not punishment, it's progress. I want you to stop seeing loneliness as a sign that something is wrong. Instead, start seeing it as a signal that something is changing. You're stepping into a version of yourself that requires a different mindset, a different level of discipline, and yes, a different environment. And that brings me to another critical point. Your environment is not just physical, it's mental. If you don't have supportive people around you, then you must create a supportive environment in your mind. Feed yourself with knowledge. Listen to empowering ideas. Read books that challenge you. Surround yourself with voices even if they're not physically present that push you forward. Because your brain doesn't know the difference between a real mentor and a virtual one. What matters is the input. I spent countless hours learning from others through books and audio programs when I didn't have direct access to mentors. And those lessons shaped my thinking, my habits, and ultimately my success. So if you feel alone right now, ask yourself this: What am I feeding my mind? Because that will determine how you feel, how you think, and how you act. Let's talk about responsibility for a moment. When no one is by your side, it becomes very easy to blame circumstances, to say, I don't have support, or no one believes in me. But the moment you take full responsibility for your life, everything changes. Responsibility is power. When you say, this is my life and I am in control, you take back the energy you've been giving away. You stop waiting, you stop hoping, and you start doing. And here's the paradox: when you stop depending on others, you actually become more attractive to the right people. Confidence, independence, and self-direction are magnetic qualities. People are drawn to those who don't need constant validation. So by learning to stand alone, you position yourself to eventually stand with stronger, more aligned individuals. But that only happens if you keep moving forward. So I challenge you right now, what is one thing you've been putting off because you felt unsupported? Whatever it is, take action on it today. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Because the longer you wait, the more you reinforce the belief that you need someone else to begin. And that belief will hold you back more than any external obstacle ever could. I've seen people with no resources, no connections, no support systems build incredible lives. And I've also seen people with every advantage fail because they depended too much on others. The difference is not circumstances. The difference is mindset. And mindset is something you control. So if you take nothing else from what I'm saying, remember this: you are stronger than you think, more capable than you realize, and more prepared than you feel. And sometimes the reason no one is by your side is because this is the moment you're meant to discover who you really are. Now let me take this deeper, because understanding this at a surface level isn't enough. You have to internalize it and act on it daily. There is a principle I've lived by for decades: you become what you think about most of the time. When you're alone, your thoughts become louder, clearer, and far more influential. And that can either build you or break you. So the question becomes, what are you focusing on when no one is around? If you focus on your limitations, your past failures, or the lack of support, you will weaken yourself mentally and emotionally. But if you focus on solutions, growth, and possibility, you begin to build an inner strength that no external situation can shake. I trained myself to become solution-oriented. Whenever I faced a problem, and especially when I had no one to turn to, I would immediately ask, what can I do right now to move forward? That simple question forces your mind to shift from helplessness to action. And action, even small action, restores your sense of control. Let me give you something practical you can start using immediately. When you feel alone or unsupported, write down your biggest challenge at that moment. Then write at least 5 possible solutions, even if they seem imperfect. What you're doing is training your brain to stop waiting for answers and start creating them. Because successful people are not the ones who have all the answers, they're the ones who trust themselves to figure things out. And that trust is built in moments of solitude. Another important truth is this: emotional strength is like a muscle. It only grows when it's tested. If you've never had to stand on your own, you never develop the resilience required for long-term success. So instead of asking, why am I alone? Start asking, what is this moment teaching me? Is it teaching you patience? Is it teaching you discipline? Is it teaching you how to rely on your own judgment? Every challenge carries a lesson, but only if you're willing to look for it. I remember times when I had no reassurance, no guidance, and no guarantee that things would work out. But I made a decision I would trust the process. I would trust that every step I took, even if uncertain, was building something valuable within me. And over time, that belief became confidence. Not because things got easier, but because I got stronger. Now let's talk about fear. Because when you're alone, fear tends to amplify. There's no one there to reassure you, to say it's going to be okay. And so your mind starts creating worst-case scenarios. But here's the truth about fear: it thrives in inaction. The longer you hesitate, the bigger fear becomes. The moment you act, fear begins to shrink. So if you're feeling uncertain right now, don't wait to feel ready. You may never feel ready. Instead, act despite the fear. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the decision to move forward. Anyway, and every time you do that, you strengthen your self-image. You start to see yourself as someone who can handle difficulty, who can face uncertainty, who can survive and even thrive without constant support. That identity is powerful, because once you believe I can handle this, you become unstoppable. Let me challenge another common belief, the idea that you need approval before you begin. So many people hold themselves back because they're waiting for someone to validate their ideas, their goals, or their direction. But when you're alone, you don't have that luxury. And that's actually a gift because it forces you to trust your own judgment. I've made decisions in my life that no one else understood at the time. And if I had waited for approval, I would have never moved forward. Sometimes you have to be willing to walk a path that only you can see. That's what leadership looks like. And whether you realize it or not, when you learn to move forward alone, you're developing leadership qualities. You're learning how to think independently, act decisively, and take responsibility for outcomes. Those are rare qualities, and they're incredibly valuable. Now I want you to think about your daily habits, because when no one is watching, your habits reveal who you truly are. Do you stay disciplined when there's no accountability? Do you keep your promises to yourself? Do you continue working toward your goals even when there's no recognition? Because that's where real success is built in the unseen moments. I made it a rule for myself. I would act as if someone was always watching, even when I was completely alone. Not out of pressure, but out of self-respect. Because how you treat your goals in private determines how far you'll go in public. And if you can build the habit of consistency without external pressure, you gain a massive advantage over most people. Let's go even further. When you're alone, you also have the opportunity to redefine your standards. Most people unconsciously adopt the standards of those around them. But when you don't have that influence, you get to decide for yourself, what do I expect from my life? What level of effort am I willing to give? What kind of person do I want to become? That's a powerful position to be in, because you're no longer limited by the expectations of others. You become the architect of your own life. But with that freedom comes responsibility. You can't blame others for where you are. You can't point fingers. It's all on you. And while that may feel heavy at first, it's also incredibly liberating. Because if it's all on you, then it's all within your control. And control leads to confidence. Confidence leads to action. And action leads to results. Now I want to address something that many people struggle with but rarely admit: self-doubt. When you're alone, self-doubt can become very loud. It can question your abilities, your worth, your direction. And if you're not careful, it can stop you completely. But here's what I've learned. Self-doubt is not a signal to stop, it's a signal to grow. Every time you step outside your comfort zone, self-doubt will appear. Not because you're incapable, but because you're expanding. So instead of trying to eliminate self-doubt, learn to act in spite of it. Use it as a sign that you're moving in the right direction. Because growth and comfort do not coexist. And the more you push through those moments of doubt on your own, the more resilient you become. You begin to trust yourself at a deeper level. And that trust becomes your foundation. Let me leave you with this thought before we move forward. Being alone is not the same as being lost. In fact, some of the most important discoveries you'll ever make about yourself will happen when no one else is around. Your strength, your discipline, your vision, your purpose, all of it is waiting to be uncovered in those quiet, challenging, uncomfortable moments. So don't run from them, step into them. Because the person you're becoming in those moments is someone the world will eventually recognize. And more importantly, it's someone you'll finally be proud of. Now let's bring this all together, because understanding these ideas is powerful, but applying them consistently is what will change your life. There comes a point where you have to stop asking, who's going to be there for me? And start declaring, I will be there for myself. That shift is everything. Because the moment you become your own foundation, your own support system, your own source of direction, you stop living reactively and start living intentionally. I made a decision a long time ago that no matter what happened around me, I would not let my progress depend on external conditions. If people supported me, great. If they didn't, I would move forward anyway. And that mindset gave me freedom. Freedom from needing approval. Freedom from waiting. Freedom from excuses. And that same freedom is available to you, but you have to choose it. Let me give you something practical to anchor this in your daily life. Every morning, before the world has a chance to influence you, take a few minutes to set your direction. Ask yourself, what is the most important thing I can do today to move my life forward? Not 10 things, not 20, just one. Because clarity creates focus, and focus creates results. And when you complete that one thing, especially on days when you feel alone, you build self-trust. You prove to yourself that you can rely on you. That's how confidence is built. not through words, but through evidence. Now let's talk about persistence. When no one is by your side, it's easy to quit quietly. There's no one to notice, no one to question you, no one to hold you accountable. And that's where most people fall short. But if you can develop the ability to keep going when no one is watching, when no one is praising you, when no one is expecting anything from you tap into a level of discipline that is extremely rare. I've seen this over and over again. The people who succeed long term are not the most talented. They are the most persistent. They keep going. They keep adjusting. They keep learning, even when it's hard, even when it's lonely. So I want to ask you, how committed are you to your own growth? Are you willing to continue even when it feels like you're the only one who cares? Because that's the test. And passing that test changes everything. Another key principle is this: you must learn to validate yourself. If your sense of worth depends on others recognizing you, encouraging you, or applauding you, then you will always feel unstable, because external validation is inconsistent. But self-validation, that's something you control. Take pride in your effort. Acknowledge your progress. Recognize your discipline, even if no one else sees it. Because when you learn to appreciate your own journey, you remove the emotional dependency on others. And that makes you stronger. It makes you steady. It makes you unstoppable. Now, I want to address something that might surprise you. Being alone is often temporary, but what you build during that time can be permanent. The strength, the habits, the mindset, those stay with you. And eventually, as you continue to grow and improve, the right people will enter your life. Not because you chased them, but because you became someone worth aligning with. Think about that. When you raise your standards, when you sharpen your discipline, when you clarify your vision, you naturally attract individuals who operate at a similar level. But if you rush the process, if you try to fill the void of loneliness with the wrong people, you slow down your growth. So be patient. Use this time wisely. Invest in yourself, because the return on that investment is exponential. Let's get very real for a moment. No one is coming to save you. No one is going to suddenly appear and fix everything for you. And once you accept that not as something negative, but as something empowering, you stop waiting and start building. You take ownership. You take action. You take control. And that's where your power lies. I've always believed that you have within you, right now, everything you need to begin. You may not have all the answers. You may not have all the resources, but you have enough to take the next step. And the next step is all you need. Because progress is built one step at a time. So don't overwhelm yourself with the entire journey. Focus on what you can do today, right now, in this moment. That's how momentum starts. And once momentum builds, everything becomes easier. Your confidence grows, your clarity improves, your results begin to show. And suddenly what once felt impossible starts to feel achievable. Now here's something I want you to carry with you long after this message ends. You are not alone, you are in preparation. This phase of your life where it feels like you're walking alone is shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and more capable. It's building your independence. It's sharpening your focus. It's strengthening your resilience. So instead of resisting it, embrace it. Lean into it. Use it. Because one day you will look back on this period and realize it was necessary. It was the time when you stopped depending on others and started depending on yourself. It was the time when you built the foundation for everything that followed. And most importantly, it was the time when you discovered your true strength. So here's what I want you to do next. Make a decision right now. Decide that you will no longer wait for support to begin. Decide that you will take responsibility for your growth. Decide that you will act even when it's uncomfortable. And then prove it to yourself. Take one action today that moves your life forward, no matter how small. Because that action is a statement. It says, I am in control. It says, I am capable. It says, I will not stop. And if you repeat that daily, if you build that habit of action, discipline, and self-reliance, you won't just get by when no one is by your side. You will rise. You will grow. You will become the kind of person who doesn't need constant support because you've become your own. And when that happens, you won't just survive alone. You'll succeed because of it.